Hey guys, welcome back. In the last lecture, we implemented the members controller where we accessed the currently signed in user. Now, in this lecture, we will move one more step forward in our authentication and authorization series of into the Rails API only application that we will implement CRUD operation for any resource. Okay, so I will choose the resource name as the company. Okay, and if you wish, you can choose the same resource or you can create resource of any of your choice. Okay, so let's start building the resource first. Okay, so to create the resource, first switch to the terminal. Okay, and open the new terminal tab, and here you need to generate a model. Okay, by the way, I'm just telling you that I'm going to implement this resource CRUD operation from scratch. Okay, and I'm not using scaffold. If you wish and you want to save your time, you can use this scaffolding as well. Okay, because I'm just going to create a resource, update resource, show resource, and delete restore resource, and list the resources. Okay, so if you want, you can implement it manually every action, and if you want, you can use this scaffolding as well. It totally depends upon you. Okay, so first implement the model, that is Rails G model, and the model name should be company here. If you wish, you can choose another model as well. And now attributes of the company, that is name and established here, and then address, and then user references. I'm adding user references here because a user can have many companies and every company must belongs to user, so I need to add one to many association for company and users. Okay, now let's run this command, and when you run this command, you will get a migration into your project and a company model in your project. Okay, so here you can see that the company model has been generated. Okay, so let's see this into the project directory, that this is the company model and it has defined belongs to user. In user model, you also need to define the has many associations. So switch to the user model, and here you need to write has many companies. Okay, so user has many companies. Okay, save this, and now you need to run the migration to get the table into your schema, because right now only the migration has been generated, but the table is company migration has been generated and the table is not into the schema. Okay, so switch to the terminal again and run the command rails db migrate. Okay, this command will create the table for companies into the schema.rb, and you will get the table here. Okay, so this is the table that is created by Rails migration. Okay, and here we have three attributes: name, established year, address, and user ID. Okay, now let me open the company's migration again, and here you can see that we have t references user null false and foreign key true. Okay, this is implementing the foreign key constraint. Okay, or referential integrity. So you can see null false, that means you cannot create a company without supplying a user to it, or you can only create company for a user. If the user id is blank, company will not be saved successfully into the database. Okay, now let's add some validations to the company's model. Okay, because we will see if company is not saved successfully, then what we can return. So we can add some validations into the company model. So validates, and then first validates the name, it must be present true, and uniqueness true. Okay, and same validation for, sorry, only the presence validation for address and established here, and it must be presence. Okay, so this is fine for now. Okay, now we need to define our resource into the routes. Okay, so open your routes.rb first. Okay, so here we will define our company resource, and you have two choices for that. Either you can create regular resource routes, or you can provide the namespace routes and version your API endpoints. Okay, so for general resource definition, what you can do: resources, and then companies. Okay, and after this, you have one more choice, that create the namespace resource. So you can create namespace resources like this namespace, and then provide the namespace name here, API do, and then provide one more namespace that represents the version of your API. Okay, so namespace, and then v1 do, and here you need to define your company resource as the versioned API. Okay, so you can copy this resources companies, and just paste it here. Okay, so now you have two different choices. If you create your resource like this, or you define your resource like this, then you do not have to create any API and v1 directories in your controller, and you can simply create resource companies controller like we created members controller. Okay, but I'm choosing this way, okay, because this is very simple, and using this way, because suppose if your API application is not API on, sorry, if your application is not an API only application, and you are creating your API endpoints into a full stack application, then you probably would like to do this. Okay, so let's create the API directory into the controller. So first create the directory and name it as API, and then into the API create one more directory and name it as v1. Okay, and now in this v1 directory we need to create our company's controller. Okay, so we will create company's controller.rb file into the v1 directory. So create the file and save it as company's controller.rb. Okay, save this, and now let's define this controller. So you can add class, sorry, not companies. First you need to mention API, then v1, then company's controller, and then application controller. Okay, but I'm not going to inherit this company's controller with application controller. So because I will create a separate controller for APIs endpoints, and all API endpoints will be inherited via that API controller. So let's create a new file into the controller and name this file as API controller. So API controller.rb. Okay, and then implement this class API controller, and then application controller. Okay, and here we will add one callback, that is before action authenticate user. Before authenticate user. Why? Because I will not allow, or I would not like to allow any user to create companies unless he is signed in. Okay, or you can say that only signed in user or authenticated users are allowed to create companies. Okay, so save this, and now copy this API controller and inherit the company controller via this API controller. Okay, now we need to implement the actions inside this company's controller. So first we will implement the index action. Okay, and in index section you need to define your company's collection. So there are two ways to define the company's collection. First you can define like, let's say at the rate companies equal to company.all, sorry, company.all. This will give you all the companies, or this will list all the companies, no matter which user has created that company. Okay, if you wish you can keep that as well, but I would like to display only current users company. So what I can do, at that company equal to, sorry, at that company is equal to current user dot companies. Okay, this will list only the currently signed in users company. Okay, and now you need to define the show action. Okay, but before defining the show action, let's define a callback here that will set the company for all the actions. So you can let's say before action set company, and then for only show for now. Okay, and then define the set company method into the private f set company. Okay, and then you can use it like, let's say at that company. Okay, again you have two choices. Either you can find it from the entire company model, so company dot find params id. Okay, else you can find it from at that company equal to current user dot companies dot find params id. Okay, and save this. So you can use any of the way, but I am going to use company at that company equal to current user dot companies dot find params id. Okay, now what happened if the company does not exist? For example, if you are a currently signed in user and you are trying to access the company of some other user, then Rails will raise an error for you or an exception for you. Okay, so what we need to do here, we need to handle that exception, that is rescue. And rescue will be like active record, record not found, because you will get 404 in that case. So we can add active record, and then record not found. Okay, and this will return an exception or an error message. Okay, and then you need to return render JSON error dot message. Okay, and status will be, or you can say unprocessable entity for now, or unauthorized. Status unauthorized. Okay, because user is authorized only to access his own companies. Okay, so save this now, and now let's create a company into the terminal. Okay, or into the rails console, sorry. So open the rails console here, rails console, and when the rails console open, you need to create companies and make sure that what attributes you need to pass: name, presence true, and uniqueness. And same for address, established here, and presence true. Okay, so let's create a company into the console now. So go to switch to the rails console and create. Let's first find the user, that is user equal to user dot last. Okay, and that is id 3, or you can simply check in the postman that what is the id of currently signed in user, that is id 3, and this is the last user, so we can create company for this user. So user dot companies dot create, and into this you need to pass the attributes, that is name, that is my company. Okay, and then address must be, let's say, India or Indore, India. And then it is what next thing, that is established year, when the company has been established. So you can add, let's say, 2020. Okay, and now hit the enter, so you can see that the company has been created for this user. Okay, so now we implemented the show action inside the company's controller. You can see into the API that we implemented the show action and set company. So what we can do now, so switch to the postman and open a new tab here, and here we need to send a request, that is http, or call the member details and remove this member details from here and add, let's say, API v1 companies and then one. Okay, so now when you send this request, you will get the company created for this user. Okay. Okay, so there is one problem. That's why we are not getting this data into the JSON. Here you can see that into the terminal, you can see that it is finding the current user's company, but in the controller, company's controller, in the show action, you need to render the company first at JSON. So render JSON at the rate company. Okay, and then status is okay. Save this and now send the request again, and you will see the company into as a JSON into the postman. Okay, so you can see that this is the company created. Okay, now similarly what we need to do as the next thing, that we need to implement other actions like for creating company. So we can add def create, and here you need to initialize the company first. So at the rate company equal to company dot new, and then company params. Okay, and define this company params method as a private method in this API controller. So you can use def company params, and here you need to permit the params for creating a company. So you can use params dot per require, and then for company, and then you need to permit the params here. Okay, so what we can do here, permit name, then address, and then established here, and then user ID. Okay, but we can skip this user id from this params hash. Why? Because just like you can see that we have two steps to fetch all the companies, like two ways to fetch all the companies, like company.all or current user dot companies. And we also saw the two ways to find the company instance like company.find or current user.companies.find. Similarly, we can create companies with two ways as well, like at the rate company equal to company.new and company params, or just comment this and we can also use at the rate company equal to current user dot companies.new. Okay, so we can initialize a company for current users company. Okay, so you also have two choices here, so whatever you feels better you can do that, but I'm going with the at the rate company equal to current user dot companies.new. Okay, now if the company has been saved successfully, so if at the rate company dot save, what I need to do as the next thing, render json and return this company instance at the rate company and then status. Okay, okay, and else if the company is not saved successfully, then what you need to provide, you need to render all the errors that why company is not saved successfully. So render, sorry, json, and here you can send, let's say, all the errors in the data. So with data you can pass at the rate company dot errors dot full messages and status failed. Okay, this is the status that we are sending as the data or as the response. Okay, and one more status you need to add with this request, that is status unprocessable, sorry, unprocessable entity. Okay, and close this request. Now we can try to create a new company. Okay, so let's switch to the postman again and open a new request tab. Okay, and provide the url to create company, that is companies. So remove this one from here and select the type of the request that must be post. So post HTTP 3000 API v1 companies. Okay, now we need to prepare the request body to create company. So select the body tab and here raw and then format of the request body that must be JSON. Okay, and into the JSON we need to provide our company's hash as the param. So let's add company and then into this company provide the attribute, that is the name. Okay, first provide the empty name because we will see how API returns the errors. Okay, name and then address also must be blank. Okay, and then established here. This has to be blank as well. Okay, and now when you submit the request, you must see the errors returned by the API. That is, you can see name cannot be blank, address cannot be blank, established here cannot be blank, and you can see the same error into the console as well, that the transaction has been rolled back. Okay, now let's just create a company with the same name that we already created, that my company. Okay, so when you select this my company, just provide the name here. Okay, so my my company, and when you submit the request again, you will see that name has already been taken. So association, sorry, the validations are working fine. Now let's create a valid company, that my company one, and then address is, let's say again, Indore, India. Okay, and then establish there, let's say 2021. Okay, so and make some space into the terminal, sorry, where the server is running. Okay, not in the Rails console. And now send this request, and when you send this request you will see that the company has been created. Okay, and it is, you can see on the terminal that transaction has been initiated and company inserted into the database and the transaction committed, and you are seeing the JSON response of the company. Okay, now similarly we need to update the company as well. So we need to implement def update and then implement this, define the update method and implement this. But before implementing the update, let's provide this action as the callback, like because we will update an existing company, so we need to use the set company for update as well, and similarly do the same thing for destroy as well. So destroy, and now implement this action. So we already have the company for the update action after registering this update action as a callback. So what we can use at the rate company directly, if at the rate company dot update, and then provide the params name here, that is company params. Okay, if company dot update, then similarly same thing, what you need to do, you need to provide the same thing here. Just copy this and paste it here, and just use company dot update company params, and here you can see, if company dot update render json company is status okay, else if company is not updated successfully, then company dot errors dot full messages. Okay, now let's try to implement the first company of the user. Okay, so we just need to copy this request body and switch another tab into the postman, and here we need to select the type of the request, that is patch. Why? Because whenever we need to update a existing resource, we need to send the either put or patch API. Okay, now just to pass the request body from here, select the raw and request format, that must be JSON, and paste it here. Okay, and now provide the URL, that is http companies one. Okay, and let's try to save this company with this name. Okay, you must get an error. Okay, why? Because the name has already been taken for the second company. Okay, so now let's provide it my first company. Okay, and make it Indore India to Ujjain India. Okay, and established here from 2021 to 2019. Okay, and make some space in the terminal. And when you submit this request now, you will see that the company has been updated successfully. Okay, so my first company Ujjain India and all that. Okay, and you can verify this on terminal as well, that the company has been updated. Okay, now what we need to do as the next thing, we need to implement the destroy action as well, because we created company, we updated company, and we listed the company. Sorry, we did not listed the company so far, so let's call the index section as well. So select the create another request and select as get, and here you need to add http and list all the companies. Okay, so when you send this request, you will see, sorry, we need to add render json into this line as well. So just copy this line, paste it here at line number, after line number 7, and add companies. Save this, and now send the request, so you will get the data on the post in the JSON form. Okay, so you can see that all these companies are created for user ID 3, user ID 3. Okay, so there are two companies created for user. Now let's create, sorry, let's try to fetch a company for other user, so we should see some error. Okay, so now we will create a company on the rails console. So open the rails console and create another company for first user, that is user equal to user dot find one. Okay, sorry, make it user, so user dot find one, so its id is user id 1, and now let's create company for it, and you can name it as, let's say, my private company, and just save this. Okay, so you can see the company id is 3 now. So let's fetch this company into the postman. Okay, so company id 3, and when you submit this, you will see that could not find with id 3 where company dot user id. Why? Because in the set company, what we set, that it must return the companies of the current user, or it should find the requested company from the current user's company. So whenever we try to access any of the other users company, we will get this error that could not find company with id 3. Okay, so it's working fine now. Now let's implement the destroy action as the last thing. So def destroy. Okay, and register. Okay, we already registered it into the before action filter. Now if at the rate company dot destroy, then render json, and then you can add, let's say, data. company deleted or destroyed successfully. Okay, and then here you can also add say status. Okay, sorry, status success, and here status. Okay. Okay. Else, if it is not deleted successfully, then you can simply render JSON data. Something went wrong, and then status failed. Save this. And now try to destroy a company. So let's try to destroy this the company with ID one, companies with ID one, and let's select the request type that must be delete now. Okay, so this request will delete the company one. Okay, so when you send this request, you will see, oh, there is some internal server error, that is method. Okay, sorry, make it symbol. Okay, and now submit this request. Okay, so when you send this request, you will see that company has already been deleted because I just clicked twice on that. That's why I'm getting that, I got that error. Okay, so you can see delete from companies. Okay, so our company has been deleted. Now let's verify it by removing the second company. Okay, so just click on the second, and you will see that company deleted successfully and status success. Okay, so our CRUD has been performed. Now let's see what happen if you try to delete other users company that try to delete a company with ID 3. Okay, and send this request. You must get an error that could not find company with ID 3 where company.user ID is current user ID. Okay, because I company with this ID for current user does not exist. Okay, this is for another user. Okay, so we can say that our CRUD has been completed. Now let's recap what we done. So we first implemented the API controller. There we set the authenticate user, and then we implemented the company's controller into as a namespace controller, and we provide the namespace endpoints for our companies like API v1 and then companies actions or companies verbs. Okay, so that's all for this lecture. Now in the next lecture, what we will do, we will add user roles. Okay, or role attribute into the user, and then we will add the can gem into our API only app to authorize the user, so that if a user is super admin, then he can perform any kind of operation. If a user is admin, then he can perform his permissible in operations, and if a user is manager or for any other role, they can only perform actions assigned to them. Okay, so we will do that using can gem in upcoming lectures. Okay, so till then, let's try this lecture at your end, and if you have any questions or any doubt, just let me know through the comment section, and I will be happy to help you. So thanks for watching this, and let's meet into the next lecture. Till then, tata, goodbye, take care, and stay safe.